Welcome, everyone, to another edition of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. Courtney's on the show today, and we're going to go over some amazing things that have to do with diet and illness and happiness. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Brad. Thanks for having me.
So I know I've known you for a while, and I know that your mental health has been severely affected over the years by diet-related illnesses. Can you talk about how that has kind of your life journey and how you've gotten to where you are now, so happy and bright and shining?
Yeah, I would love to share that with you. So let's see. Let me just start by saying I'm now a functional nutritionist, and I work with these issues. So now I've come full circle. I'm going to tell you the beginning of my journey. Um, for most of my life, I dealt with pretty severe mental illness. Um, I went through tons of therapy. I went through treatment centers. I had multiple different psychiatrists. I say 6 psychiatrists, but I bet it was more than that. I was diagnosed with depression first, and then major depressive disorder. I was diagnosed with anxiety. I took a test and failed and was diagnosed with ADHD. And I had a gentleman tell me I was bipolar. Uh,
Whoa,
every
that's
oh,
quite the array of diagnoses.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't flourishing. Let's just say I wasn't flourishing. I was hurting really bad. Um, I went through multiple suicidal periods of my life. Just insane erratic behavior, panic attacks, feeling a loss of control of myself. And it was really scary. And so when you feel that out of control or sad, you don't know what to do. So you go to the doctor. And what they told me is that my brain didn't release the right neurochemicals and that I needed to be on this prescription drug for the rest of my life. And I was like, I don't want to be on drugs. And they said, you're going to need this for the rest of your life. One after another, after another, after another told me that. They would give me a drug that didn't work or sort of did. And then they would give me another one on top of that. And then I would just have tons of side effects, sexual side effects, weight gain side effects. I was numb. Some of them gave me more anxiety. None of which made me flourish. Some of them made me function, but not flourish. And I guess I just felt really lost. And I thought life was going to be this long journey. And I then am now grateful I got sick with chronic illness. And because I got sick with chronic illness, I got into functional nutrition and started seeking natural functional medicine practitioners to help me reverse the chronic illness that I had. What I was unaware of is that when my body came back into balance, all the mental conditions went away, which is the biggest gift in the entire world. So now what I want to tell anybody who's on this call is I was diagnosed with depression. So I had a label like I'm a person who's depressed. I am whatever. And what I need you to know is depression, anxiety, OCD, bipolar, even schizophrenia.
Even schizophrenia. I was going to say that.
Even schizophrenia is a symptom of the body. I need you to hear this. It's much like a headache or a pimple. It is a symptom of mitochondrial dysfunction, metabolic dysfunction, when there's inflammation in the brain. So they were right. My brain was not releasing the right neurochemicals. But it's not just because I was some human that my brain didn't work well. It was because my body was in dysbiosis and an insane amount of inflammation was on my body. And so my brain couldn't work right. And once I brought my body back into balance, I don't have one of those conditions. I don't have one of those conditions.
So Courtney, I've got to stop. There's like a bunch of stuff I want to, I mean, you've said such great stuff. I want to hit in some of these points. So I met you obviously after you had dealt with all of this. So to think back, like you're telling me all this and I'm like, gosh, I can't believe she was that person. She was that person who was suicidal. You didn't speak about it. And I hope it's okay to share that you also had addictions, right? You had alcoholism.
Mhm.
So first of all, it's amazing how far you've come, and you're going to tell us, I know, in a couple of minutes how you made this transition, and it wasn't from doctors giving you a bunch of drugs. But I also wanted to ask your opinion on something, because one of my mentors, Gabor Mate, talks about how some institutions will say that addiction kills people, right? And he's like just the opposite. He's like, addictions keep people alive because otherwise they might have taken their life. Do you feel, to some degree, and I know we're getting off a little bit of tangent, but I think this is really interesting. Do you feel like your addiction, and I'm not saying it's great to be addicted because it's a terrible thing, but do you feel like it kept you alive, and how so? Like by numbing the pain to some degree?
I'm gonna have to answer honestly in that my addiction was life-threatening. So, uh, addictions in my life can numb me from the pain that I'm actually going through. So this is something totally different than food and those other mental conditions. Addiction numbed me from the pain, but addiction can be so extreme that it itself can be life-threatening.
Right, right. So yeah, it's not a
So
good thing in general, but I do know it has saved some people's lives, right, or lots of people's life. Another question I have is that doctors love to label things as idiopathic, which means there's really no known cure. Do you
yeah.
have a lot of clients that come to you and they say, "I've been to my doctor and they say there's nothing I can do," and they're in terrible shape, and then you do your thing on them and they're completely different?
Yeah, so what I need to say first is I'm not a medical professional, and I'm not suggesting anybody come off their medication. What I am suggesting is if you have a plan of action right now that's not really working, where you're not really flourishing, and you think there's got to be something more than this, there is. I'm going to walk you through some lab markers that you want to check and go through. And then so basically, people come to me, I bring their body back to balance. It's about a 6, 8 month process. We let all the inflammation come down. We work on recovering anything in the body that's off. And then at that point, they can go back to a psychiatrist and work with them on tapering down their medication. I've helped tons of clients be able to do that, and it's the biggest gift. So I have something to show you. Okay, so this is basically what happens right now in the model. There is this sick plant, right?
So
So,
so there's gonna be a lot of people not being able to see this. So she's showing
okay,
basically a plant, a household plant
so
that's like literally dying and weeping.
yeah, so if I show you this plant and I say, what do you think this plant needs? What do you think it needs, right?
I'm gonna
Does it
say
need
water.
Zoloft? Yeah, well, does it need Zoloft or Paxil or a drug, a statin or a blood pressure medicine? No, it needs water and sunlight and nutrients. Um, the very first things that you want to think of. So I guess I'll talk about the things that you need to be doing baseline, right? You can take any medical treatment and you can do whatever, but if you're not doing the baseline things, no human body is going to function properly. You need about 80 to 100 ounces of water a day. Our brain literally needs that to function well. We need quality sleep. All of the sleep before midnight is so much more impactful on the body. So if you're staying up till midnight, you're getting 6 hours of sleep, the body's not functioning well. We need sunlight. Sunlight in our eyes, the photons that come from the sun, literally help produce our chemicals, melatonin, and so that we can sleep well. Your diet. If your diet is causing inflammation in your brain, you have if your diet's causing inflammation in your body, you have inflammation in your brain. When that happens, it can't release the right neurochemicals. Um, and then you need quality protein. You want to think 1 gram of protein per body weight, and that's very often needs to come from animal proteins. We need the amino acids from proteins to actually build the right neurotransmitters. So often somebody comes to me and they're on 2 medications and they're not doing well, they're not thriving. And I say, how much water did you drink yesterday? They say, oh, I don't drink much water. Oh, my sleep's a mess. Yeah, I don't sleep well at all. Oh, yeah, I'm not doing well with protein. and they're eating a ton of carbohydrates. And then I find out they have a permeable gut. So when we have a permeable gut, or a leaky brain air, like there is, we have a protective barrier in three places: our gut, in our lungs, and our brain. There's a barrier that protects all of these things. When any of those junctions become leaky, um, we are then prone to symptoms of those organs. So, yes.
So, Courtney, let's talk about inflammation. You've mentioned that a lot, and I know that most disease is inflammation. And I don't know how many people think or know that inflammation is a huge cause of mental illness, right? And depression, anxiety, and all that. So, talk to us about what are the foods that create inflammation, and yeah, let's just start there. What are the foods that create inflammation? How does inflammation negatively affect us both physically and mentally?
Yeah. Um, Inflammation, we now know, is the driver of pretty much all chronic disease. Heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disease comes from, stress on the body and inflammation. A high carbohydrate load causes a lot of inflammation. Grains do. And actually, it's hard for me to fully say. What I can say is, when you're thinking about if somebody's body's not functioning well. So if you have depression, your body's not functioning well. You need to dig deeper. You need to find a practitioner who can help you dig deeper. The first things you want to look at are your vitamin D levels. If your vitamin D levels are in the tank, your brain and your mood are going to be in the tank. So that's number one. And then when you get those labs run, you want them on the high end of the range, especially if you've been dealing with mental health issues. Another important marker oh, sorry.
So we'll get to the labs in a second because I was going to ask you what should they order and where should they order them. But let's go back to carbs because I want to give like people, because some people just don't know this. Like, so carbs, we're talking about potato chips, we're talking about rice, we're talking about pastas, bread. What are some other things what are most Americans now with the epidemic of obesity? What are the things that so many people are eating that is just literally and figuratively killing them?
Yeah, so a lot of people come to me and they say, I'm already eating healthy. It's so weird. My body is not working right. And I say, great. What did you have for breakfast? They said oatmeal. And then for lunch, they have chicken and a sweet potato. And then for a snack, they eat an apple or a protein bar. And then for dinner, they have fish and white rice and a vegetable. And that sounds healthy, except for they just have. So all of those carbohydrates, oatmeal, rice, potato, apple, protein bar, all convert into sugar in the body. Sugar, blood sugar swings cause dysbiosis, inflammation, mitochondrial damage, metabolic dysfunction. All of those things will increase your likelihood or your symptoms of your mental health issues. So what I just described is a healthy American diet, but it's actually not. Humans shouldn't be having that much carbohydrate or sugar coming in at all in their body. So you want to be thinking of um,
Me
lowish carbohydrate. If you're working on putting into remission mental health stuff, you want to be on moderate protein, high fat. Now, that doesn't mean everybody, but that's a huge portion. There's an amazing psychiatrist right now, just came out with a book. His name is Chris Palmer, and he has been helping reverse schizophrenia, all kinds of mental disorders. And depending on where you are in the spectrum, if you are very far, you are going to need a deeper level of ketosis. If you just have mild depression, getting basic inflammation and pulling some of the carbohydrates, running labs, making sure you have somebody helping you with an optimal diet, you can kick it out.
So
And
Courtney, is an optimal diet more meats and vegetables?
yes, correct. So low starch veggies, and you're looking at more meats, proteins, healthy ones, lots of salmon and fish for good omega 3s. You want good quality meats, grass fed meats, organic chicken.
And you can get
Yes.
grass-fed ground beef at Walmart and Target. I can believe that. Costco doesn't carry it. So I called you 2 months ago because I get labs run every quarter, and I think you're going to say everyone should get labs run every quarter of the year. And I had a higher than what I wanted A1C, which is a marker of blood sugar, and it's really a marker of like how long you're going to live. And I was absolutely shocked. And you're like, well, what are you eating? And the only thing I eat that's I didn't think was bad was this huge Honeycrisp apple every night. Like that was my dessert. And I have to say, I had no idea that eating an apple, the sugar from an apple, was just as bad as eating a sugar from a candy bar. And you're like, yeah, it's just as bad. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so sugar is sugar. Natural sugar actually isn't any better for the body. Um, and if you think about an apple, somebody thinks, well, how could an apple not be good for me? Except for an apple 200 years ago had 4 grams of sugar in it. Those big Honeycrisp apples that you were eating, like medium big size ones, have like 20, 24 grams of sugar. That's like 6
Oh my
apples
gosh.
from 200 years ago. So we're not playing, it's literally not apples to apples. It's a totally different product. And a Honeycrisp, they've crossbred these new breeds, and each time they come out with a new one, they're sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, so they have more sugar in them.
Whoa. Whoa. So, all right, let's move on to labs. What
Yeah.
labs should people order? How often and where should they get them?
Yeah. So a lot of your labs you're either going to need to go to your medical doctor for, or you can get a functional nutrition practitioner like myself, who can order the labs for you. The first one I had talked about was your vitamin D levels, period, baseline. If your vitamin D is in the tank, it's going to seriously affect your mood. The next one is your blood sugar, because blood sugar dysregulation affects metabolic issues. When you have metabolic dysfunction, you will often have brain-related symptoms of depression, anxiety, whatever. And so your A1C, you want to get tested, and you'd like that between 5.4, 4.8, and 5.4 optimally. Um, and then you want to test your fasting glucose. We'd like that under 90. Something else that's really important is if you've had lifelong anxiety, you say, I've had this since I was a babe. So did I. I also have histamine and methylation issues. So when my histamine spikes, I literally kick into this serious overdrive of anxiety until I learned how to handle the histamine issues. Um, yeah, my mental health was quite complex. The next thing is if your hormones are a whack, um, your mood will be all over the place. And so although a pill can sort of help, if you still have hormones that are going on that aren't functioning well, you're not fixing the problem. You're not giving the plant water, right? You're not fixing its hormones. The next one is if you have leaky gut. You need somebody to help you find out if you have a permeable gut and or do a gut healing protocol. And the next one is if you have heavy metals. If you have a high dose of heavy metals somewhere in the body, you will most likely be exhibiting some form of mental health symptom. I do want to make a caveat that in extreme cases, and when you're with a medical professional, sometimes medication is appropriate, and a doctor will always find that for you. But if you're on them and it's not an acute situation, it's always advantageous to start digging around in your health to find out what else is going on. And maybe, just maybe, can my body thrive without these? Because there's a high likelihood it can.
So, Courtney, where can they get a list of these labs? Can they reach out to you on Instagram?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on Instagram and I can walk you through all the labs. The last lab that I have run for everybody is an omega-3 6 fatty acid ratio. When your omega-3 6 fatty acids are off, you have systemic inflammation. When there's systemic inflammation, your brain's not releasing the right neurochemicals. So for me, I had a combination of all of these things going on. I had serious blood sugar dysregulation. My gut was leaky. Um, my hormones were off. My vitamin D was in the tank. Um, and then once I started to breathe, I literally, this is what I need you to hear. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. That worked for her, but I've had this my whole life. It won't work. Literally, I was working on healing other chronic issues, and they told me that my mental health symptoms would go away. And I thought, no way, you don't understand. I've had this my whole life. It's just what I have. Except for it went away. Like, and there's no way when the body's not in balance that it's going to function at a better level. There's 100% possibility that if your body is in balance somewhere and we bring it back into balance, you're going to have better function of your brain. Period.
So, Courtney, you told me about a year ago to get the omega-6/3 ratio test done, and I was thinking, "Wow, I eat really great. It's going to be amazing. My ratio is going to be perfect." And it wasn't. The omega-6 was out of whack. And after talking with you, if you eat out, I don't eat out a ton. I eat out a couple times a week. If you eat out, every single oil is omega-6. They're not grilling with olive oil, which is not omega-6. And like she said, if you have too much omega-6, you could be experiencing inflammation, which can mess up mental and bodily function. So
Yeah.
what I did is I stopped eating the French fries, and I started to increase the omega-3 through certain fish oils that you recommended, krill oil and another type of fish oil.
Yeah. Um, Another reason why omega-6s are so off balanced is they changed what they fed our cattle. So they started feeding our cattle grain, and um, that's basically like feeding them sugar all day. And so conventional red meat is full of omega-6 fatty acids. Um, Grass-fed meat, 100% grass finished, and when you look for it, you want 100% grass-fed or 100% grass finished meat. The grass brings omega-3s into the red meat. So then there's a balance of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids in it. And really, the biggest thing is do not guess. Do not guess. Even if you're kind of blue today, you don't have to be. You don't have to be. Somebody can help you dig around and find out what's going on in your body so that your body can thrive. I see it over and over and over again. And then the other part that I want to say is I work a lot with Brad, and he helps people go to the root cause of what is going on with trauma. And when the body is in such dysbiosis, um, it's all a real complex mess. Both things literally need to happen for thriving, happy lives. So um, so he did it with me too. He did a hypnosis session, and I'm listening to the recording over and over and over, rewiring my subconscious, because even at a healthy state, um, I still had this wound inside of me that needed healed. And so when you do both what Brad has and you heal the deep wound inside, and then you work on bringing your body back into balance, you have this cohesive, happy person. Here's the truth. I went to a networking event last night, and I was talking to this guy. You have to like go around the room and meet somebody. And I said, hi. And he said, you're happy. Like, and he said it like it's like weird. And I said, I am. I said, I live in a wonderful world. And he was looking at me, and I said, I created this. So between healing deep wounds inside of me, bringing my body into balance, and then other things I do with my work with neuroplasticity, you can have a radiant life. If I can go from hurting so bad to being like this, I used to self-harm, like literally harm my body. I was so trapped in this body that didn't function well. I just thought because I had experienced a lot of small T trauma in my childhood that I was just stuck like that. And you don't have to be stuck. I don't want to go into my story because it's like,
So let,
it's so dark. But if I can get through that and my body can flourish with tools like Brad has and with bringing my body back into balance, anybody can.
Anyone can. So a couple things there. Trauma. Don't get thrown off by the word trauma, because a lot of people seem to tune out when they hear trauma. And she just
Oh,
mentioned little T trauma
yeah.
and big T trauma. So when you hear that you might have issues in your life caused by your subconscious thinking driving your behavior because of trauma. And you're like, well, I didn't have a traumatic childhood.
Yeah.
Trauma,
Oh my
trauma
God.
can be trauma can be as small as your little sister coming home from the hospital from being born, and you thinking that your parents loved her more. So don't get caught up on that. And
Yeah. Thank you.
what Court,
Thank you for saying that, Brad, because my whole life I would go to therapy and I would say, I had a great childhood. So it wasn't that I went through crazy, horrific things. I could just couldn't figure out why I couldn't function as an adult.
yeah,
And then
so
I learned more. So yeah.
so 9 out of 10 of my clients, I ask them when I first start with them, did they have a happy childhood and were their needs met? And they all did, but none of them would come to me if they did. So it's not about blaming the parents. It's just the
Oh,
opposite. It's about saying your parents did the absolute best they could do, given what they had. So Courtney, in terms of lab work, they can find you at final.key.wellness on Instagram. Message Courtney and she'll send you a list. She can have them run. You can go to your doctor. You can have them run. But what she was saying, and I want to reiterate, is that look how dark of a life that she had only, 10 years ago? A few.
I'm 11 and a half years sober.
Okay, great. So 11 years ago, she was in this really dark place being suicidal. And it really didn't take her the full 11 years. She's been happy like this for a while because I've known you for a couple of years. So if you're listening to this and you're really suffering or you're struggling or you're dealing with weight issues or poor health or shitty marriages, bad businesses, like just know that there's a better option. You don't have to suffer. You do not have to suffer.
You don't have to suffer. And I had gotten into alcohol for a short period of time. My main addiction was food. I had gained and lost the same 70 pounds 6, 7 times. I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but it's just like, yeah, I mean, I've been in a body that doesn't belong to me. I've harmed myself with food or by overeating, coping. And what I didn't know is I was coping with the depression with food, but that was exacerbating my depression. So it was like this feedback cycle. Like I would get depressed, so I would go binge on sweets, and then the sweets would cause more inflammation and dysbiosis. So overgrowth in the gut is something else that I didn't talk about, but that can cause issues in the brain. But so I had overgrowth in the gut, and so I would get depressed, eat, inflammation, more depression, eat, then want to die because I'm stuck in this big body. And it was such a vicious cycle. And I got out, and you can too.
You can too. So if you're sitting there saying, you know what, I don't have any trauma, my life is great, I'm happy. That's where I was 3 years ago, but it wasn't true. So I developed this self-love quiz at bradchandler.com/quiz. Take it. And if you score anything except extreme self-love, know that if you score mild self-love or lack of self-love, don't take that as a, oh no, that's bad. Number one, take that as you definitely had stress and or trauma in your childhood. And number two, if you're in one of those categories, you have the ability, like I did and like Courtney did, to profoundly and exponentially change your life in a good way in a matter of like days and hours. Not you don't have to go to therapy and do this stuff for 10 decades. It's incredible when you put your mind to it and you have a proven system, how much change can occur in your life.
Yeah. I mean, between the healing that you do with the rapid transformational healing and bringing the body into balance, literally somebody's light can be on faster than you can even imagine. Faster
Yeah.
than you can imagine.
Well, Courtney,
So you can also find me on Facebook if you don't have Instagram. You can type in Courtney Jacobs and Final Key Wellness. And in a couple weeks, I'll have a website up at finalkeywellness.com. But otherwise, you can find me at social media first. And yeah.
So, guys, thank you, Courtney. That was another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. If you like this, please, please, please rate it, subscribe to it, comment on it, give me a review. And if you need to reach me for anything, bradchandler.com/contact has all my social media as well as a free 30-minute call with you. And as I end every episode, you don't have to suffer. There's a better way, and love heals all. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.